What's poppin', people? It's Dante walking around the Centennial Arboretum on this beautiful morning. Check out the big tree. This tree is incredible. You know, when I look at a tree and the way that it grows, planting its roots in the ground, extending its limbs into the air, you know, seeking sunlight, planting its roots deep down low in the ground, in the earth, standing firm, growing tall. You know, we too can grow. You know, we too can grow like these trees, extending out into the sky. Similar to the way in which these trees grow, we can grow through our photography. You know, I'm looking at this squirrel right now jumping around that limb. It's so beautiful to see the way they elegantly kind of leap around. You know, as a photographer, the way that you move on the street, I believe, can become art. You know, where the way that you walk and the way that you photograph, the way that you talk, you know, the way that you carry your everyday life is, I believe, I believe it can become a living work of art. You know, I think that we should live our lives as if it's a living work of art. And through photographing, we grow. Through photographing, we learn. You know, through photographing, we discover why we wake up in the morning, I think. You know, in a way, I treat photography as a way for me to augment my reality, to extend my limbs outward through the creation of new photographs. You know, when you grow as a photographer, you know, I don't necessarily believe it's through experimentation. I don't necessarily believe it's through making stronger photographs, working on a particular project, but actually to grow as a photographer is to simply photograph, you know, to make new pictures each and every day, to what I like to call a frenzy state. You know, when I enter this photographic frenzy throughout the day of photographing all throughout my day, I'm simply expressing my will to power, similar to the trees extending tall into the sky, competing with these other trees. You know, it's that will to power for the tree to grow and to plant its roots deeply. You know, I believe that as photographers, we too can express this will to power through making new photographs. To me, that's the ultimate goal. That's the ultimate aim. It's to simply produce more photographs. I don't necessarily think the goal is to produce necessarily good or bad photographs, but it's simply to augment your life, to grow larger through making more pictures. And when you consider this notion of growth through hypertrophy, with, you know, nourishing the muscles in the gym by sort of, you know, lifting heavy weights, having these micro tears in your muscles, and then they regrow again through satiating your body with the proper food and nutrients that it needs, to getting deep sleep, to getting sunlight, blah blah blah, like the natural sort of cycle of life biologically, like the trees and the way that they kind of grow. You know, I believe we too are similar in a way as humans, you know, on the physiological, biological level. You know, we are physical beings. And so when you consider this notion of growth, yeah, you too are undergoing photosynthesis. You too need nourishment. You too need water, sunlight. You too need rest. You know, there's this cycle that humans, I believe, go through that is very similar to the way in which a tree grows. And so through photographing and making new pictures, I believe you can enter hypertrophy through photographing more, similar to the way in which a weightlifter goes into the gym and hits those reps and PRs through increasing the weight on their bar or undergoing physical challenges. And so by photographing more and remaining in this frenzy, in this flow state of producing new photographs, you increase your power through the act of creation. You increase your will to strive upwards, like the trees, through elevating the things that are around you, through elevating the mundane, monotonous, everyday life, through the act of making a photograph. And this, to me, becomes this godlike ability that derives through your gut, through your intuition, to click the shutter of the things that interest you most, leaving out the superfluous details of what you're not interested in. You know, and that's why I love photographing with the Ricoh, particularly, where I use the high contrast black and white settings, which allows me, wow, this is incredible, all of these scattered leaves from the flower petals from the cherry blossoms as they wither away now. It's so incredible looking down this path. Oh, that would be beautiful if there was like a child running in the background. Maybe I'll see something like that today. You know? And so when I look at these beautiful cherry blossoms and the way that they bloom so quickly and randomly, spontaneously, and then are withering away, obviously, as you can see all the petals, you know, falling to the ground. Wow, a black squirrel just fell from the tree as I said that. So beautiful. I love these black squirrels. And so you know, we undergo this cycle of growth, of sort of birth and death, and it just reminds me, you know, looking at the cherry blossom trees and how quickly they appear and disappear, that we too have a finite nature. You know, amor fati, love your fate. Our fate inevitably is death. And so when you love your fate, and when you love the fact that you will die, and you champion that and you affirm that in your everyday life, recognizing that if you go to bed tonight you may die in your sleep, you wake up with gratitude in the morning, just simply eager because you're alive for another day. And then I believe this sets you up in this state of flow through the day, through evolution, through transformation, through the creation of new photographs, through walking and being physical, through going out there in the world and seeking new challenges. Yeah, I think all of this kind of stuff that I'm thinking about today, I believe can impact and influence the way in which we consider this notion of growth in the realm of our photography practice. You know, what does it mean to grow for you as a photographer? For me, to grow as a photographer means to produce more photos, to walk longer distances, to travel more, to photograph more, to think more about why I photograph, to simply remain curious each day. You know, that to me is a very noble aim, to remain in this curious state. But in order to remain in a curious state, one must be full of vitality. And ultimately, I believe the only life worth living is a life full of vitality, meaning one should be walking with a strong gait, with their head up, their shoulders back, their chest open, ready to conquer the day. And if you think about life this way, as an arena for you to conquer, you know, I believe then you set your body in motion and simply float through the chaos, because life is unpredictable, spontaneous, and out of our control, similar to that black squirrel that just jumped from the tree, right? And so when things come your way, you're able to then defend yourself and to sort of fend off all of these distractions, whether it's the media, the news, celebrity, whether it's negative people that come into your life and say hateful things. You know, there's a sort of benefit to being full of vitality through waking up in the morning with this physical and mental clarity. I believe then you can achieve anything in the realm of photography. And so think more critically about how you can increase your vitality, how you can increase your physical strength, how you can hone in on your physical health. And then through that physical health, you find true wealth. You know, for this to me is sacred, where simply being awake, being, you know, clear-headed, seeing with clarity and sharp visual acuity, moving with a strong gait in my step, you know, this is what I believe will set us up for success in photography, through growing each day, through pushing yourself each day, physically, mentally, and spiritually, through the creativity of the photographer, through the act of making the photograph, through the act of recognizing patterns, through looking at the world with observation skills, through looking at the world with curiosity. And this to me is where we want to be. You know, this to me is what it means to photograph, is to augment yourself, to grow larger. And if you think about it too, with the digital technology that we have, such as the Ricoh GR compact digital cameras, we can produce so many photographs. We can augment ourselves so much easier with this technology. And so I encourage you to use these new mechanical processes of photographing with digital technology. Through using small JPEG files, you can produce so many more photographs, store so many more photographs, upload so many more photographs, publish so much more. And this is all through the sort of technical side of things, right? Where, you know, I believe that through adopting new processes, new workflows, and being more innovative with the way that you approach photography, you can augment your reality and grow even larger, where a lot of the past ways of photographing, whether it be shooting with film cameras, making prints of photographs, while these things are great, it's very limiting. And so if you think about the digital world and you think about cyberspace or the internet generally, it's an infinite expanse, it's something that's unconquered. I mean, if you think about it, right, like when we went west in the United States to sort of fulfill our manifest destiny of, going out there, right, think of like the cowboys and, our conquests to acquire more land in the United States. When you think about owning your own domain, owning your own website, publishing your own photographs online, you can go out there and conquer new domains. You can conquer new terrain that's within cyberspace, in the digital world, where I believe the future is headed. And so think more about that notion of conquering and conquest, and through augmenting yourself like these trees, growing tall and competing for space. You can certainly do this easily with the power of digital technology, photography, and websites, the internet, with Wi-Fi. It's like anything's kind of possible now. So think about how you can use that as a way for you to propagate, to augment, to grow larger as well. And so I encourage you to delete your Instagram account where this is a limited space that keeps you in a box, but you want to go outside of the box. You want to give yourself a blank sheet, an endless canvas to draw upon. And so if you go to WordPress.org, host your first name, last name on bluehost.com. I personally use the Astra theme, and actually maybe I should make a full tutorial on how to make the simplest blog possible, where you can actually then follow along and make your own website. I should actually do that, because this has been one of the best game changers, the best sort of mindset switches with my photography, is the presentation of photographs on a website blog, and having this endless place to play and tinker and explore with the act of making digital photos and sharing photos digitally. And so that's my thought of the day, thinking about what it means to grow, to expand. And then through the act of making photographs, I believe that we can infinitely grow. And this is, I believe, a powerful thing. And think about photography too this way, right? Where I can go ahead and whip out my iPhone, and in ChatGPT I can hit the plus icon. I have the paid premium version. I can zoom in and I can make a photograph of that sculpture there, and I can say, tell me about this sculpture, ? Or I don't need to add it. Tell me about the sculpture. Tell me about the sculpture. Yeah, mate. The sculpture is a statue of Friedrich Schiller, the renowned German poet, philosopher, physician, historian, and playwright. The name Schiller is inscribed prominently on the base, and above that is a German dedication which reads something in German. And so this was erected in 1886, around the time that this Centennial Arboretum was formed. Commissioned by the German American community. The significance, cultural context, yada yada yada. We can now make photographs and learn about everything around us through the power of AI, which I believe is another way to grow and to expand and to augment your universe, the way that you think, the way that you think about photography. Also, generally, I think it's interesting. And so, there's something to be said about the power of using AI as a way for you to learn, and then through the act of making a photograph of something, you can analyze the image. You can have your sort of best friend in your pocket that can assist you, like a learning tool that I believe also can help you grow and learn and augment yourself through the act of making a photograph of something and asking why and what is this. You can find out more and learn more and grow more. It's a brave new world for photography. Think more about how you can use it to augment your reality and grow, similar to these trees, planting their roots deep into the earth, extending outward into the air. And so through walking endlessly and moving my body and photographing, not only am I, bound by gravity and sort of walking around as this flesh creature, sort of just going within my everyday life here, working, photographing, eating, sleeping, pooping. But I'm also striving upwards through making a photograph of something that's maybe seemingly nothing and creating something, and taking the ordinary and making it extraordinary through the act of making a photograph. Perhaps we can transcend this reality and strive upwards through creation. Absolutely beautiful. Wow. Nothing like catching the dewdrops in the morning, huh?